So Adam, thank you so much for joining us for an Audible Sessions interview about your brand new book, Undoctored.
Thanks for having me.
So start by telling us, what is Undoctored about?
So, I had a book called This Is Going to Hurt, which were my diaries when I worked as a junior doctor on the wards. And Undoctored, I guess, is both the prequel to it and the sequel to it. So it looks at two parts of my life. First of all, medical school, and also what's happened to my life since I left medicine. So it's about exploding your life and hopefully putting it back together and looking a bit about what medicine's done to me as a person.
Yeah. Why is it that you think people make medicine hard to leave?
It's a very good question. And I was part of the problem. I think back to friends of mine who talked about leaving when I was a doctor. I was like, what? No. It's a slight cultishness to the job. You don't even think of it as a job. It's more important than that. It takes over your life. It's often your defining characteristic. When I left medicine, I was an outlier. I think I was the second person in my cohort of hundreds who'd left the profession.
And how was mental illness regarded from kind of within the ranks of medicine while you were working as a doctor?
I think a lot of people don't seek help when they need to because they're worried that their colleagues will judge them. And it's ridiculous. You wouldn't worry about being judged for breaking your ankle or, having a problem with your lungs or your liver. And yet, if it's in your head, in your brain, somehow there's a huge stigma attached to it.
And how did that affect you when you were in medicine, but also a medical student?
Halfway through medical school, I struggled with, I think, what you'd probably call disordered eating. I'd met a guy at a sort of some kind of rowing jamboree that I was a spectator at, and spent a night together. I got a review of my evening from this bloke who said that I was pretty good for a big lad. And I hadn't really thought of myself as a big lad before. And in my mind, I was always just like a normal lad. And I actually absolutely was. I'd give my right leg to weigh that amount now. And I'd have to give my right leg and my left leg and a couple of forearms and some other bits to weigh that amount. But it really stuck with me. And for a year, I basically didn't eat normally. I was never the most sociable person at medical school, but I ended up, exclusively on my own and weak and unable to really go out. I was sleeping 14 hours a day. I was, barely capable of staying awake during lectures. And it would have been unconscionable to speak to anyone at medical school about it.
And with the kind of post stuff, you reflect on a lot of things with your husband. And one of the things that's kind of mentioned as a little question in there is the NHS homophobic? And I wondered what your take on that is.
When I was a medical student, you go on all different, they're called firms. Mm-hmm. So you work a bit in surgery and general medicine and orthopedics and psychiatry and all these different things. You bounce around the hospital. Mm-hmm. And this was on a surgical attachment. We paraded on the first day in front of the consultant. He said to me, "Get your hair cut, you look like a girl." I didn't look like a girl. And even if I did, why is he saying anything? But this bloke made me cut my own hair using some scissors from a nursing station. And I continue to paint a thumbnail as a sort of, small act of rebellion or a micro flamboyance. I would still cover it up if the dinosaurs were marching past. But there was certainly the feeling in medicine at the time that in order to thrive, you needed to just be quiet and mediocre. Don't rock the boat.
Mm. And what about now? Do you think that has changed in terms of both, I guess, the medical school side of it, but also the patient-facing side?
So I think it's now better than it's ever been to be LGBT plus within medicine, and there are pride societies in all the medical schools that I know of. Equally, there are pride organisations within almost every hospital trust, and that certainly wasn't a thing before. Worryingly, recently there was a book or a booklet produced by a senior GP about how to pass your GP postgraduate exams, and it advised gay people to not sound too gay. So there's still a bit of a journey to go on, but it's always a journey, isn't it? And it's better that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And how involved do you like to get in kind of politics and the politics of all of this?
So I met Matt Hancock, and Matt Hancock got the job. And as soon as it was announced, on Twitter, loads of people were just tweeting him the front cover of This Is Gonna Hurt, saying, "You need to read this, mate." And he replied almost immediately with a photo of his own copy saying, "Yeah, it's already on the bedside table." And I met him when he'd been in the job no time at all. And we sat down like this, and he said, "If you could make one change to the health service, what would it be?" Which, that's a good question, and the truthful answer is it needs billions more pounds, tens of thousands more staff, but he wasn't going to do that because some scruffy writer came in and said that. So I said that the evening before I'd been performing my show in the West End. Just go on stage, read out some of my stories, people laugh or leave or whatever. And in my dressing room, there was a poster on the wall that said Theatre Helpline, 24/7. If you've got any worries about, it's emotional, financial, whatever, call us. And I said, if you're a doctor, there is no such thing as that helpline. There are some organisations for certain areas, for certain types of doctor, but there's no, this is who you phone. And he was like, well, that can't be right. A short while later, one of the SPAD, Special Advisory people, emailed me to say, you know what, you were right. There isn't a helpline. There isn't this service where doctors can get counselling. After that, Matt Hancock expanded a service that was just for GPs and mostly within London to an all-doctor nationwide programme. It's called the Practitioner Health Programme. And he name-checked me and my book in that announcement. And even though I don't agree with his politics, that move there has definitely saved the lives of doctors who were struggling. And I think that's the single thing that I'm most proud of having achieved through my writing, because you write and you hope that the odd person will read it, or, and your publishers hope it'll get translated into lots of languages and win a prize or whatever. And it's been lucky, and it's done both of those things. But the thing I'm most proud of is that somehow the book turned into a real life change that can actually help people.
Yeah. Adam, thank you so much for coming to chat. Thank you for sharing what you have in the book. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.